Hey, thanks for joining us. You are listening to Youth Unhinged by Yuvaan and Karan. When fanatic Jen hit us in the face, we both sat down and decided to talk about it. If you happen to be around our age or seem confused on what is going on in the minds of us millennials, cheer up, you have come to the right place. Welcome back everyone to Youth Unhinged, and we are back again with a new episode. Today we are going to talk about two main issues that are happening in the world right now. One is the Sri Lanka's economic crisis through all the protests, and also the potential World War III, which is between Ukraine and Russia.
Somehow this has got me hyped. But I think when you said World War III, it's very relevant because I think what's happening in Ukraine and Russia is also like related somehow to what's happening in Singapore by proxy. It's just like a chain reaction.
Wait, what's happening in Singapore?
Okay, so what's happening in Singapore is interesting. You're cutting straight to the chase. Okay, so let's go straight to it then. Okay, so at the moment there are protests going on in Sri Lanka, and I think they are under a state of emergency right now. So for us Malaysians, not something too far away. We had that not too long ago, right? Because of COVID, a state of emergency. Yeah. So there's a state of emergency been declared in Sri Lanka as well. But here's the twist: it's not due to COVID. Well, okay. So you've got this family, basically like the Gandhis in India. So there's the Rajapaksa family in Sri Lanka. So they are the main guys, or the most famous politicians around there in Sri Lanka, I think. So the finance minister there is a Rajapaksa, the prime minister is a Rajapaksa, and the president is also a Rajapaksa.
Wait, finance minister is still Rajapaksa, man? Because I thought it was another guy, his name was Ali Sabir or something, and then he just stepped out the day after he was appointed. Like in one day he just dropped.
So when was this?
Recently, that's the one of the main crises that happened.
Yeah, no, the reason why I ask is because just 3 days ago, that's on the 3rd, I think, the whole cabinet resigned except for the prime minister.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Actually, not everyone. There's 41 people left the parliament, and then it's supposed to be 200 plus people, but then now it's only like 100 plus people left.
How do you just leave the parliament?
Because all of them like resigned.
Yeah. So when you resign, but then when you resign, you're not actually leaving the parliament.
But then I think we should like give a brief explanation of what is going on actually. What is happening is that all of the people of all generation in Sri Lanka are protesting because of the economic crisis.
Yeah, so
just
there is
to give like a background of what is happening, right? So the main problem is because their currency value dropped very severely because they can't manage their finance technically because they're in debt right now.
So and that debt they owe to
the world banks, I suppose.
To the world banks, not to China.
Not everything, I guess.
Okay.
And that is about 4 billion. And because of the debt, they are suffering from power cut and acute food shortages, and also they don't have enough drugs to treat the patients in hospital and other medical centers as well.
Right. How did shortage of food suddenly involve shortage of drugs? That's interesting.
Because like they can't import drugs from overseas.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, that's important to know. Yeah,
like these are like one of.
Yeah. So if you don't have money, then you can't import the drugs. Okay, so in that case, the drugs are not flowing in. So if you've got a problem with drugs, then I expect you probably have a problem not only with food. Then I mean, if your problem is money as a whole, then drugs are just one of the more significant issues. They are probably having problem importing anything in the first place, right?
Yeah, true.
It's just that drugs are one of the things that is most needed in the world.
Yeah, that's right. So what people are saying that this is just the beginning of even severe situation in future. Yeah,
and they're already under a state of emergency.
Yeah. But then the people are actually protesting not only to recover the situation, they are also protesting to make the Rajapaksa to resign from his prime minister position.
Which he seems very adamant to do.
I mean, sorry, not prime minister, the president of Sri Lanka. Is it the same thing? I'm not sure.
Well, they're both related anyway. The president and the prime minister are both Rajapaksas.
Yeah, that's true as well.
So I guess they want an entire whitewash of the whole.
Because as Karan said just now, this Rajapaksa dynasty has been in the politics for like few years.
Have you ever heard of them before this?
Before this, not actually. Like after our research only, I got to know them. I mean,
Right.
to be honest, I'm not really interested in politics, except when issues arise.
Right.
But then, like, they are known for like a lot of, like, they have like a lot of corruption allegation, like the whole dynasty, each and every one of them.
And I think the recent papers that were leaked were what, the Panama Papers? Are they the Panama Papers or Pandora?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember now. Yeah. Anyway,
But then,
one of them,
yeah, that's how
they
like
were
people got
implicated as well.
And another Rajapaksa, who is the one above Gotabaya Rajapaksa, I'm not really sure about his name. But then he
What's his position?
higher than the president of Sri Lanka. So I
Higher
suppose
than
he's
that?
the
How
prime
can you
minister.
get higher than the president? So I guess the president is like the king of Malaysia. So a constitutional role. No.
So
Yeah.
the Gotabaya Rajapaksa is the president of Sri Lanka, and then there's Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is the prime minister.
So Mahinda is actually the more powerful guy.
Yeah, true. And this Mahinda, what I read was he came to the government because I'm not exactly sure. What happened is that he was like very radical in what he manifests and so on, right? Like people were afraid of him and people appointed him into the cabinet.
This is
Like
Rajapaksa,
even though all of these corruption allegations are still out there, people appointed him out of fear. That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
right.
That's why I think that the Sri Lankan people are very furious about it. Like, they don't really have a say on who is being appointed and whatnot.
Yeah, true. And also, I'm assuming that the other Rajapaksa was president even before he came in, right? So he already,
if I'm not mistaken.
And if that's the case, then he already sort of like wielded a significant influence over what happens in parliament and so on. But in April 2021, so this president, so it's the president that announced it. I don't know why, who took the executive order to do this. Might be the president, might be the prime minister, but in April 2021, both the president and the prime minister were seeing eye to eye anyway. So the president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, announced that Sri Lanka would only allow organic farming, totally banning agrochemical-based fertilizers. So now they don't have fertilizers essentially, because organic farming, you don't have fertilizers. It's not organic if you use fertilizers, I guess. And so because of that, you had a drop in tea production. Do you like your tea or your coffee better, Yuvaan?
Coffee, always.
Coffee, okay. So not much of a hit for Yuvaan, but the Sri Lankans felt it. You know why? 425 million USD lost just like that, evaporated into thin air. And also,
that's not just any little amount of money, right?
Not a little amount, but a few billion here in Malaysian currency, and even in the US. Okay, the US spends billions on on things alone. So maybe in the US not so big of a deal. Anyway, they're in debt anyway, so it doesn't matter. And so you got $425 evaporated just like that. And here's the other thing: 20% drop in rice production within the first 6 months. So 6 months and half a year, you had a 20% drop in rice production, and basically meant that they couldn't have enough rice to sustain themselves.
Yep, and rice is 1/3 of Asian food. So having like 20% gone from one whole country's production, that's really a lot.
Very significant. And so because of that, from being self-sufficient in rice, they had to start importing the rice. Obviously,
and they also can't export the rice. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, okay, that's fantastic. We're on the same frequency here. So now, and that cost $450 million. So 425 million, 450 million gone just like that. So that's already close to $1 billion.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's like another possible way for them to clear the debt if they had the money.
Yeah, correct. I don't know how much they owe who, but anyway, they are quite a bit of a situation here. And so I was saying the Rajapaksa dynasty, right? I said the finance minister is a Rajapaksa. Yeah, it's they're quite closely related. And by quite, I mean like really, really closely related. The finance minister and the prime minister, Mahinda Rajapaksa, they're brothers.
Oh. Because what recently happened was that they appointed another finance minister, his name was Ali Sabe, if I'm not mistaken. I think before him was the Rajapaksa guy that you're talking about.
Right.
And what happened is that one day after he was appointed, he resigned in the name of he's doing it for the best of the country. He want the best for the country. So he just resigned like one day right after
One day after he was appointed.
Yeah.
That seems very, very strange. But here's the thing, another thing. So who took over from him? The person that took over from him, when was that? Do you know?
Who after Ali Sabe?
After the Rajapaksa guy who.
After Rajapaksa guy is Ali Sabe guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So when was
That's
he
the
appointed?
recent one.
When was this? When did this resignation and reappointment or subsequent
Last
appointment
week, if I'm not mistaken, like during this crisis time,
During
like
this
this
crisis
week
time.
or last week. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't remember the exact date of it.
Right.
But then, like, I want to like bring attention to another thing. So you were telling like how they come out with this organic farming thingy,
Mhm.
and they obviously see the negative side of it, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, the Gotabaya Rajapaksa is still brave enough to say this crisis was not created by him.
Mhm.
This is exactly what he said.
Mhm.
And to just like run away from the responsibility by saying that, oh, this crisis is none of my business.
Mhm.
And you also say that he does not want to resign from his position, right?
Yeah, very adamant.
Yeah, but then that's the one of the main thing that the people are protesting for.
Isn't it?
So
Yeah,
it's like
to such an extent that he had to declare a state of emergency, but yet somehow he's not the problem though.
Mhm. But then
Interesting.
what I heard, Karan, like he want to revoke the state of emergency because there were chances for re-election.
Uh-huh.
And if the re-election actually happen, obviously he will be humiliated by the loss, right?
Yeah.
And people say that is why he revoked the state of emergency.
Yeah. True. Okay. So then, well, you can't declare a state of emergency indefinitely. So one way or another, this is going to come to a close. However, it looks like it's going to take a turn for the worse before it gets better. That's what it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So foreign debt in Sri Lanka was 42% of the GDP in 2019, and then it rose to 119% of its GDP in 2021. By the end of 2022, the country is due to pay US $4 billion to debtors, whereas in April 2022, the government reserves amounted for US $2.3 billion. So basically, that debt is 2 times more than what the government reserves have. Now, big relevant question. And you're going to tell us what it means. What is GDP?
I mean, even I didn't know the meaning before I started the meeting. I mean, Karan told me about it. From what I can understand is GDP, which stands for Gross Domestic Product, right, is the way to measure a country's economy. Right. And what happened is that like through the sales that they do and through the obviously like import and export, all those stuff, right? So this become like the measure for you to say, oh, this country is doing well from the economical perspective. But then the formula goes like private consumption plus gross private investment plus government is investment plus government spending plus export minus import. That's the main thing lah. Export minus import.
I see. So government spending is not, it's going to be like plus a negative, right?
Yeah, because they're currently in a debt.
And if you are on the bed right now, please don't think about maths. Just pretend you didn't hear that. Now, well, we're going to take a short break. It is time for us to have a short break. We will be right back after this. We're going to talk about Ukraine versus Russia right after we wrap this up. And welcome back. So we were talking about Sri Lanka's problem, state of emergency, big stuff happening there. But before that, we are going to take this opportunity to wish all our Muslim listeners very happy Ramadan, happy fasting, and hopefully all your work goes to plan without you starving every day. but honestly,
and I think by the time this episode released, they're already 2 months into fasting. 2 weeks into fasting.
Yeah,
sorry, my bad.
That's right.
2 weeks into fasting. So I think another 2 weeks only.
Yeah,
you guys
go
can
for
do
it. Yeah. Another 2 weeks and you can have all your rendang all back. And yeah, I'm waiting for some as well.
I'm waiting, but then I can't get,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to tempt you. Well, anyway, back to our topic, Sri Lanka. So we're going to try to wrap this up pretty quickly. Do you know what happens when you start printing money?
I'm going to give my honest answer.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I don't know what
the biggest problem that happens is inflation, I believe. So
okay.
Inflation is where the amount of money that you have starts to become less worth, and the products that you want to buy become of higher value. Yeah. So you need more money in order to buy a product that you want to buy. And so that's what happens.
And it's also like a chain reaction, right?
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're printing money. So when you print more money, the value, because money is backed by gold, and other assets. And so when you print the money, that asset that you have is basically being split into even more directions. So you're dividing, let's say your gold is worth 500 and the money that you print out is 500. So then you just have to do 500 divided by 500 and your money is a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So one dollar or one whatever unit worth of currency that you have is going to be worth exactly one piece or 1 unit of gold. And now when you start printing money, it doesn't become one anymore. You start going down into the decimals. Point
I think
something.
same as stock and demand, right?
Exactly.
When there is less demand and then there's more stock, the price will go down.
This is a minute of revelation here. Wow. Okay. And so that's what Sri Lanka
We
did.
suddenly become like economic analysts.
My
right?
goodness. Yeah, all of us should study economy after this. So the IMF warned Sri Lanka. They said, hey, don't print money. But that's what Sri Lanka did. And
the currency value also dropped by 15% so that they can get help from International Monetary Fund. Because that is like one of the conditions to get help from International Monetary Fund apparently.
Right. I see.
And this happened on 8th March. If you guys just went to Google and search for Sri Lanka rupee, right, you can see the drastic drop on 8th March. Like it just dropped like, as I said, like 15% drop.
Like a death plunge suddenly, yeah?
Okay, my question was, do you think protesting is the only solution for this problem? Because in my opinion, right, honestly, I feel like instead of protesting, if people just do their own job, and they do it properly, the economy will grow again. But of course, this is without having a proper insight on what is truly happening in Sri Lanka, right? But this is just my general thought of it.
The fundamental issue is if people do their job and then you've got corrupt fellows on top, then So I mean, it's a good theory, but then must be based on, I guess, must be based on proper policy making at the end of the day.
And so I think I read somewhere people saying that the confidence of people towards this politician has reached like absolute zero.
Boiling level, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Boiling level.
Boiling point. So it's like almost gonna explode. Point. What?
No, it's funny because I said absolute zero. Absolute zero is like the coldest temperature.
No. Absolute zero as in but then you weren't talking in terms of temperature though. I was.
Yeah, I understand. but in chemistry, it's interesting how that's so funny.
Okay, it doesn't matter. So now let's go into Russia and Ukraine. Okay, so because of the repercussions of the ongoing tense situation between Ukraine and Russia, so otherwise known as the Russo-Ukrainian War, is felt in the already sluggish economic conditions of Sri Lanka. So how is the Russian-Ukrainian war affecting Sri Lanka?
Exactly.
So Russia is the second biggest market to Sri Lanka in tea exports. Do you have any idea Russians drink tea, man? Second biggest.
I mean, to be honest, if you ask me, I would say like Cayman Island is the highest tea producer or whatever. I'm like that shallow in that field, my knowledge about it.
No, but Russia, the second biggest consumer of Sri Lanka's tea export. I mean,
interesting, huh?
Aren't they all like vodka? I mean, I don't know. This is a surprising fact. Okay, and then you've also got Sri Lanka's tourism sector, which is heavily reliant upon these two nations, Russia and also Ukraine. And it's important to note that the Russians look at Ukrainians as their brothers. That's what Putin said, at least.
Russians look at Ukrainian as their brothers.
Yeah, because
the brothers are arguing right now, lah.
Something like that. During the Soviet Union, they were part of the same territory, and so now we can get into this properly. So here's the Russian side of the argument, and then maybe you can, or what I've heard at least. So Ukraine wants to join NATO. Once Ukraine joins NATO, which is basically some like Russia's enemies coming from the Cold War, with which involved America versus Russia, but basically the two main players, right, America and Russia. So that was the Cold War. They never faced each other directly, but they fought through proxy. Now,
that makes sense.
When you have NATO, which is the pact formed by the Americans to sort of solve the Cold War, and what people argue should have been demolished once the Cold War ended. NATO shouldn't have been there. And now Ukraine wants to join NATO. And when Ukraine joins NATO, that means basically you have direct communication between all these countries in NATO, including Ukraine, which means NATO can now put their assets in Ukraine, which is surprisingly or not, believe it or not, at the doorstep of Russia. So why would you want military equipment in your doorstep? And so because of that, Russia is going into Ukraine. So what do you have to say to that?
I feel like I understand Russia's point of view.
So okay, now what is the US doing with Russia? What's their big deal? It seems like the Cold War never actually ended. I mean, you see all the movies.
I think it just become like a long-lasting beef that never ended. It's like these two toxic couples that are always everywhere, fighting everywhere.
Yeah, interesting.
Honestly, we can put it that way. Like America and Russia is like one toxic couple.
Right, and then China and Russia have got good relations, as do China and not India. Surprisingly, China and Pakistan have got good relations. Did you see that coming? I had no idea.
Oh, I had no idea either.
Now that's interesting. And also, when the Republicans were in charge in the White House, you had more confrontations, and I mean non-military confrontations, so more like spats between America and China, not America and Russia. And then when the Democrats took over, then it became back to America and Russia. I think during the time Obama was leaving the White House, I think it seemed like as though, I don't know, depends on what news sources you're following, but it seemed as the situation was very tense between Russia and America. And then once Trump took office, it was like super, super cool at that point. And now it's sort of like back to Russia. Trump's problem was with China, and now it's back to Russia. So I don't know. It might be all politics.
So like Trump being the president of president of America, just changed the arrow to another point.
Well, it's interesting to note how stances and you can get world peace like at the snap of a finger. All you have to do is like change something like that, something as drastic as the president, and then everything is fine already. Interesting.
Yeah. I think that kind of goes along with our topic of this episode. So we are planning to name this topic as one man's greed, right? Like this just proves it. Like if one man wants something and then it can cause a revolutionary change, you can possibly create a world war like Putin, or you can just create world peace just like that.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So what's the full saying again? One man's greed is another man's...
One man's greed is another man's tragedy.
Tragedy. Okay. Well, that's a good note to end. However, Yuvaan wanted to end by pointing out this very interesting fact. So you've got multi-billionaires in the US, and I think at one point in time when I was about maybe 15 or 16, their net worth, I think the richest person at the time was Bill Gates. It was something like 50 billion USD, and that already was...
I feel like throughout my life it was Bill Gates until like recent years.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows, he might be up there again sooner or later. But anyway, the point that I'm making is he was 50 billion, and then today, like just fast forward a few years later, not many, and now the person on top has got like 120, 130, close to 200 billion fall. I mean, what is the roof to this billion? I mean, where's the roof?
They have so much money that it makes us feel like for them the money won't even worth anything.
Yeah, isn't it? So, and you were saying that if Elon Musk wants to, he can basically solve Sri Lanka's entire
You guys are hearing it first from Youth Unhinged. Please note this. Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos can easily solve this problem by just giving the 4 billion to Sri Lanka to pay their debt.
After all.
Yeah, and they have like if I'm not mistaken, Elon Musk's net worth is almost going to reach 200 billion, if I'm not mistaken.
And his company,
like very small amount of money for it.
Worth $1 trillion, more than $1 trillion US.
Yeah,
already.
You got Tesla, SpaceX. If you want, you can just become a nobleman by solving Sri Lanka's problem. And who knows, maybe after that, Sri Lanka will give him tea for free.
Is Elon Musk?
I'm solving the world's problem.
My goodness,
Simple
big
as
stuff
that.
Here at Youth Unhinged, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness, we've gone full swing today, huh?
Yeah. How many countries we've talked about today?
Wow.
China, Sri Lanka, Russia, Ukraine,
US, Ukraine,
Mars.
Let's hope we don't end up going there.
We might not, but then our future generation will, I guess.
Who knows?
So scary to talk about space.
Okay, so well, the point that I was trying to make anyway about printing money is, so the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, declared that the public debt of Sri Lanka, so we're going back to Sri Lanka, it's unsustainable, and warned that the Sri Lankan government, if they continue to print money, they are going to cause monetary instability. So basically, an implosion of the economy.
Yeah, and that will cause inflation to be even worse.
Okay, so that's where we leave it.
Yep. So to wrap it up, I think I want the listeners to share their opinion. Do you guys really think International Monetary Fund is the only way to solve any country's debt? Because to give an example, South Korea accepted IMF, but Malaysia does not accept IMF. And Malaysia also overcome their financial crisis. And
To a
South
certain
Korea
extent.
also, yeah, to a certain extent. At least we are not in that much of debt, I guess. And South Korea also came out of it. And for your surprise, they are one of the fastest country to recover from their financial crisis. So this just gives like a very broad perspective that IMF can be either useful for you or not useful for you. So I want our listeners to share your opinions.
It's also important to point out that we're not at that point yet where we understand the ins and outs of how it all works. I mean, we just had to look up what GDP means as well. So well, I think maybe a little bit more insight might be needed to get a clearer picture of what's happening. But well, we're starting somewhere, aren't we? Well, that's all we have for you today at Youth Unhinged. Thanks so much for joining us. Wishing all of you a very happy night, evening, day, wherever you are at, depending on where you are. We've got listeners in the US, we've got listeners in Korea. Shout out to all our Korean fam or Malaysian students studying in Korea, and then we've got guys in KL, Singapore, Kuwait, I think.
A few
places.
Come on, KL is in Malaysia also, right?
Yeah, KL is in Malaysia, so of course our homeland. and also our YouTube page is growing steadily, though. I have to point that out. Fantastic stuff.
Yep.
So great episode that we've
And
had
I
here.
hope that Sri Lanka also find a proper solution for it. I'm really crossing fingers for it.
Yeah, let's hope it all comes to a good ending.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.